everybody, Miss Gayle here from the Boulder City Library. Today's activity is all about paper airplanes. It's a great summertime activity for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's great because it's something that can be done indoors, outdoors. It doesn't take a lot of expensive supplies. And when you're finished making them, you have a fun toy to play with. Which brings me to the other great thing about paper airplanes and flying toys of all kinds. There's a lot of geometry, math, science. There's a lot that can be learned. So it's really good for your brain, especially the mathematical side, the problem-solving side, the critical thinking side. This is great exercise for the brain, and then when you get outside, you can run around flying your planes and you get even more exercise. It's a win-win situation. Basically, all you need is scrap paper. They've used colored paper in here, which you could use. If you just want to make something and fly it and don't care what it looks like, then just grab up some scrap paper. Just make sure it's okay with your parents and make sure that it is indeed scrap paper and not an important report that somebody may have written or instructions on how to use that new lawnmower. So just get permission first. You'll also need some instructions. That's what I'm here for, and I've got the help of some great books that we have at the library. A ruler would help as well. Boulder City Library, there we go. If you don't have a ruler, this is just a little added thing, no extra charge. A dollar bill is about 6 inches long. If you can see that, 6 inches for a $1 bill. So if you're trying to measure something, and you go lengthwise, that's 6 inches. And if you go the short way, it's 2.5. So now we've got some adding and fractions going on here. 6 inches plus 2 inches is 8 inches, and we can't forget that ½ inch. So that gives us 8.5 inches. And look what the book says. The book says to use 8.5 inch by 11 inch paper. So you can use a dollar bill to measure those things. Or a ruler. You know, if you're out and about though and you just want to get a ballpark figure and you happen to have a dollar bill in your pocket, it will help. All right, let's get started. I have some paper here. I've got these are some old flyers from the library that we don't have need of anymore. So I'm going to recycle these. And then we have some other paper here that's got some information on it that's already been dealt with. And so we've got just this is what I mean by scrap paper. Paper that's already been used once, but we're going to give it a second life. Sometimes that makes a really neat design if you use something that's blank on one side and written on the other. In fact, I'm going to start with the red paper that has a little flyer on the back, and you'll see what I mean. Another thing you might need from time to time, it doesn't look like this one needs it, but sometimes you'll need a paper clip or some tape for some more of the intricate designs. The paper clip can help with some of the aerodynamics and counterbalancing and things like that. But this one's pretty simple. So we're going to start with this one, and it shows how to do it right here. So I'm going to back this camera off a bit so you can still see the instructions and you can see how I'm making it all at the same time. Okay, so it's showing that we need to start with our paper in the long direction facing us, and we're going to go from one side to the other and just fold it in half. Some people call this hot dog style. So we're going to fold it in half. Another really good thing that this type of activity helps with is those people that have trouble focusing. I'm one. Yes, that's me. This will help with those concentration skills and those focusing skills. To just sit quietly and learn to do something and you really concentrate. So it says to fold and then unfold. The corners up here, these top corners are going to fold down to the center, and this is where that concentrating really helps out. So I'm going to concentrate very, very hard, and I'm going to try and get it just as perfect as I can. I'm lining things up. The better you line things up and the closer you get to perfection, hey, nobody's perfect, nothing's perfect, but the closer you get to perfection, the better your plane will be. We're trying to work on our concentration and our focus, so we're going to do that. So we're going to very carefully line things up as best you can. And sometimes that means going slow and really paying close attention to what you're doing. Now, all my lines are all, that's a little off there. And just make some readjustments, and that's okay. There we go. Now, that's very close to what it needs to be. So we've folded those corners, these corners to the very center, and we've lined this whole line up with the center line. If you look down, you can see it's all lined up. We're going to fold these edges into the center. And it helps if you take your finger and just kind of, so you want to, if you steer that in the right direction, and then bring it all on down, keeping your finger on that point, you should get a nice clean line. So start at the top, get that all lined up exactly how you want it. Then you can bring it on through. This music is the wonderful Yo-Yo Ma. I can't say enough about the guy. Fantastic. We've got kind of a funny looking little triangle almost. We're going to pick it up and we're going to take this right side and we're going to fold it behind. So whenever you see in books this symbol here, it's showing to put it behind. And then this means turn the whole thing over. So fold it behind and then rotate. Now you're going to fold this top one. Again, you're going to put your finger right there. And then line it all up. This whole thing is going to get lined up with this edge underneath. And it might take some doing, but that's okay. You do it. Take your time. Do your very best. And then you're going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Now this is just your basic airplane. Okay. There you go, and you can hold it underneath here. This is the bottom, so you're going to hold it underneath like this, and you're going to fly it like that. Now this is, see, Rudder. You can decorate these too if you wanted to. I think they're just fun to fly. This one, like the book says here, it is a long distance dart. That means this one is designed to go long distance. The pointy little nose right there where everything comes together is going to cut through the air, bringing the air underneath to hold up the wings in the air. And that's what's going to give it its lift. That's what's going to give it its forward motion, thrust. Well, the thrust is you. This goes just straight through the air and it'll go really fast. That's what this kind of plane is designed to do. One fun thing would be to measure off some long distances, maybe 10 feet, and then stand back and put a line at the starting, like a starting line. And then stand behind the line and have you and your friends or your family, everybody take turns throwing their plane and see how many feet your plane will fly. And you have a little plane competition to see whose plane can fly the furthest. And you'll have to experiment a little bit with things like, do you want to throw it up a little higher? Do you want to throw it down a little lower? Do you want to just straight on? experiment and see what works best. It's fun to try those things out and you learn at the same time. Here's some things you can do with your dart plane. A lot of planes are kind of heavy on the nose unless you give them flying controls to bring that nose up a little bit. And the way you control the nose up and down is called the elevator. And you can make elevators for your dart. You'll need scissors and, of course, your plane. And you're going to want to make some cuts in the tail. Now, each one should only be about a 1/2 inch long, so just little tiny cuts. I made a cut there, and I made one right there, and I'll make one a little closer to the center also on each side. Okay, these little cuts are going to create the elevator. And you want to make sure you're not cutting through the whole plane. Okay, so the pieces, these flaps that are in between the cuts are called the elevators. Bending them up and down is where you're going to get some control of your plane. If your plane keeps on doing nosedive after nosedive after nosedive, try this. Take your elevator and bend them up just a little tiny bit. Not a whole lot, just a little bit at first, and then give it a try, and if you need more and more, you can make adjustments as needed. So test fly it to find the correct angle for the elevators. If it swoops and falls, then they're too high. It's just one of those things you're going to have to kind of adjust as you go along. Now, a rudder. This part here is the rudder of the plane. And the rudder is what makes the plane move right and left. In order to get that, you need to make a little cut right here on that fin, and now you can move it. You can fold it this way, or you can fold it this way. See, you've got a lot of movement now with this back piece because you made that little cut right there. So now you can move it back and forth. If you want the plane to glide to the left, turn your rudder to the left like that. Just a little bit. You don't want to get too extreme, or I don't know, maybe it'll fly in a circle. And then if you wanted to make a right curve, turn it a little bit to the right. Just a little bit. So if you want to do, like, for instance, a tight right turn, you might have to adjust your elevators a little bit so that the plane doesn't come to the ground so quickly. You want it to glide to the ground slowly while it makes its turn. That gives it time to make a turn. But if it just goes straight to the ground, you don't have time for it to turn. And that's what pilots do in a plane in order to make those, when they have to circle the airport, or when they have to, fly in a circular pattern, they will have to keep the nose up of their plane so that they can make that turn. Another thing you can do with your elevators is adjust them so that you can do rolls. And the way you do that is you want to bend one of your elevators up and the other one down. And that will cause it. It's just how it all picks up on the air currents. So you've got one going up and one going down. Again, you'll want to mess with it a little bit. Give it a try, and if it doesn't work, make your adjustments here by bending or straightening a little bit, whatever needs to be happening. When you throw the plane for a roll, what you want to do is throw it very hard and very fast. And all this is just changing the airflow. That's how you control a plane. You change the airflow. Who's ready for some more math? Woohoo! Here we go. We've got one whole sheet of paper, and that's what we're going to start with. However, we're going to fold it in half, hamburger style, or the short way. Okay? Now, fold that, and then you can just tear that in half, or cut it with scissors if you like. It's up to you. Look, one half 1/2 is a whole. See, the whole thing's been put back together. Handy dandy. Now we're going to take that half and fold it in half. Can you guess what we're going to call that? Half of a half is a fourth. And I'll show you why. We're going to fold this in half, then we're going to carefully tear it. And just for demonstration purposes, we're going to do the other one. Now, you don't have to do this to make the project. I'm just doing this to show you all about fractions and why it's called a fourth. This is called a fourth because it is one of the 4 pieces of paper. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 pieces. This is one of the 4. That's what you'll be using, 1/4. And when everything's put together, you have 1 again. When you have all 4 of the fourths, 4/4 equals 1. So anytime you see a fraction with the numerator and the denominator that are the exact same, that's 1. And that's why. That was the fraction demonstration. So when something calls for a fourth of a piece of paper or a quarter piece of paper, that's how you do that. This particular one, next up, this is made from taking a regular piece of paper and we're going to cut off a strip along the long side. So for this one, you're going to need a ruler, and let me show you how to measure so that you're straight. It says to cut off a 3.5 inch strip off of the long side. So we're gonna need a line right about in there, and we're gonna cut that off and use it. But oh no, right about in there. Wow, 3.5 inches is way longer than I thought. Okay, so the way you measure something, you go line up what you want to measure. And in this case, it's 3.5 inches. So there's the 3 and there's the 4. So in the one in the middle, the longest line that's in the middle between the 2 numbers you're looking at, that's the half. So this is at 3.5. So I'm going to make a little mark here by that edge, and I'm going to scoot it over to the middle of the paper and do the same thing. I'm going to line it up with 3.5. And I'm going to make my little mark right there. And I'm going to go to this end, and then again, 3.5, 3.5, and make another little mark. Now I've got all of these marks made. I'm going to line my ruler up along with all of those marks. I'm going to hold it down and draw a line. There. That's going to be my cutting line, which I'm going to use my scissors and cut this part off. Please don't ever run with scissors. I've actually never done that, but I hear it's really dangerous. I don't know why anybody would actually want to do that. I mean, what is your hurry? You're in a hurry to go cut something up? Okay, so now we have this piece. And now they're saying to cut a 5-inch slit down the center of the strip. So, if you want to find the exact center, well, let's just eyeball it. But if you wanted to find the exact center, you would take 3.5 and you would divide that by half. And then you could easily do it by saying, well, half of 3 is 1.5. Then you've got that other 1/2 inch that you have to divide into. So you've got 1.5, which is there, and then you've got to add that 1/4 inch, which is your 1/2 inch. So actually, there's the center. If you really want to get technical about it. So you can line it all up and eyeball it. Go to the 5 because it says to cut a 5-inch slit down the center. There we go. So now we're going to do that. We'll cut that right there. Look at a little leg. Or one of those things. Ah, in the wind, you know how it plays around? Yeah. Okay, so then you're going to cut 2 1.5-inch slits into the sides of the strip. And let's just 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches. Okay. So there's our cuts there of 1.5 and 1.5, and we're going to fold this in here Well, I guess I should have gone over a little more. Should have measured. Okay. Here we go. It's a fun little toy. It makes a noise. Okay. Enough of that. So we fold those flaps into each other. Basically, you want thirds going on. That part doesn't have to be exact. Then you're going to fold this, just give it a little fold at the bottom. Just a little bit. And then you're going to put a paper clip. This is when you need that paper clip I was telling you about. Give it some weight. Right in the very middle. This is part of why it's going to spin. Then these are the wings, and you're going to fold one back and one forward, okay? One forward, one backwards. Behind your toy, your copter, and then in front of your copter. It says, hold on to the paper clip, throw the model straight up into the air as high as you can and watch it spin to the ground. Okay, I'm going to try that. I just tried it and it actually works. And I've got a low ceiling in here too. So imagine outside I could really throw it high. But you just throw it up into the air, hang on to the paper clip, throw it up in the air and watch it come twirling down. Like that. That is a whirligig. There we go. Here's an interesting one. This is a hoop glider. Now I've seen kids make these before. I've never actually made one. So this will be a first for me and maybe for you too. So let's get started. And this one calls for a 6-inch square of paper. A 6-inch square. So again, we're going to do our measuring. Let's scoot the book over for a moment. Start at one edge of the paper, and we're going to see there's the edge of the paper, the edge of the ruler. We're going to slide all the way over. It changes color. It's so cool. And there's the 6. So I'm going to make a little line right there. And I'm going to do the same thing up here. I'm going to start at one edge, and I'm going to go to the 6. And now I'm going to connect the dots. Make sure my ruler's straight. Okay, so that's part of my 6-inch box. Now I have to turn it this way and do 6 inches that way. 6 inches there and 6 inches there. Now I connect those dots. There, that's our 6-inch square. Or you could go buy origami paper that comes in 6-inch squares. But this works too. Okay, so we're going to just, again, safely cut this out. And we are making sure we're using scrap paper. Nothing that belongs to someone else that they want to keep. We've asked permission. Okay. So here's our square. It says to start with a square, and the square we have. We're going to have it here in this diamond shaped pattern, and we're going to take the point down here and we're going to fold it up to this point here. We're going to bring it right up here and fold. Again, trying to be precise, and if it takes time and concentration, that's okay, because that's a good thing to know about this time. Is concentrating and focusing. It's a good thing to do. Now we're going to fold the edge of this, which is already pretty thick because by now it's 2 sheets thick. You're going to fold it up and we're going to create a narrow strip. Probably want it as straight as possible. Here we go. It looks like a weird shaped sailboat. Or even a paper hat, but we can't wear it because there's no opening. And then fold it again. It is easier the second time, let me tell you. Well, you probably already figured that out. Now we're going to bend it, bend the model. And as you bend, you might want to start creasing a little bit to give it that rounded edge. And you're going to tuck one side into the other side. Right here, there's like a little pocket. There we go. This is the exciting part, according to music anyway. Can you imagine playing the cello like that? What a fun thing that would be. Okay, now it looks like, oops, and you stuff it in there as far as it'll go, it says. Okay, I'm pretty sure this thing's going to fall apart if I throw it in the air, but you know what? I'm going to just trust that it'll work, because I'm going to try it. If it doesn't, then I'll put some tape on there. So I've got this shape right here, and it says to hold the pointed end of the plane. That's a funny looking plane, isn't it? This is the pointed end. You're going to hold that pointed end. You're going to push it, kind of give it a gentle push with your fingers in this direction, like that. And then you're going to want to reach way up high. Hold it way up high, and then give it a little push and see what happens. I'm going to give it a try. Let's see. Okay. Mine crashed into the wall. What does yours do? I imagine if I were outside and I didn't have a wall right there, it wouldn't have crashed into the wall. So, that's another kind of that's different. I've never made one of these, and it didn't fall apart. I'm really surprised. It did not fall apart. That's a pretty sturdy little fold there. Cool, okay. Well, those are fun. So, yeah, there's another one that we can make. It's the arrow. And this would be really interesting to take this plane after we make it, because it says it's the best long distance flyer. And remember this one, the long distance dart? It is perfect for contests. It zips through the air straight and fast. So this would be a good comparison. Let's see what happens. Maybe this one goes further, but it takes longer to get there because of the design. Maybe this one goes further. I don't know. We'll see. We'll make them both and then do a little contest to see which plane goes the furthest. And maybe you can even, count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and time it. Or you can get real technical and get a stopwatch. Anyway, let's make this one. Starts with just a regular old piece of paper, 8.5 by 11 inch paper, which we have right here, scrap paper that nobody wants. We're going to give it a new life, this piece of paper. Okay, I'm going to slide this up so you can see what I'm doing. And it says, now this one starts off pretty much like the other one, where you fold from edge to edge, hot dog style. Okay, remember when we did that? This is very similar to that first plane, but it says it's different. I believe them. Okay, and then you're going to unfold it, and you're going to fold the corners to the center. Wait, this is just what we did on the other plane. What? But it says it's different. Okay, let's just roll with it and see what happens. Get it lined up. Boy, is mine crooked or what? Good grief. That's better. There we go. So they're folded into the center. Oh, wait! What? This is different. So now it says to take the point and fold it down. Look at that. And here's our fold line. It's already there for us. That's the folding the point. We're folding the point down. And we're going to fold the corners, this one and this one, to the center. We're taking this corner just to the center. There's the center line, this corner to the center line, and then we're just going to give it a nice crease. And the same thing on the other side. This corner to the center line and a nice crease. Okay, flatten everything out. Then, right here is our point. Remember the one we just folded down earlier? Okay, now we're folding it back up. So it's gonna, whoops. So we're gonna fold it right back up. And then we're gonna take the entire left side, this side, and we're gonna fold it behind, okay? So that's what I did. Took this left side and fold it right behind the whole thing. And then you're gonna rotate it this way so that this top edge here, there's this top edge, this layer is gonna come down and be even with this bottom edge right here. So we're taking this top edge and we're folding it down to meet this corner right down here and lining that edge up with that, and then we're gonna fold. Then we're gonna flip it over. Ooh, there. Whew. Piece of paper's heavy. No. So this top edge, or this thing that's left over, is just gonna come down and meet right here. It's all gonna meet together right there. And then you're gonna fold that. Then, here's the exciting part. You have these wings and this plane. That is one snub-nosed little plane. I don't know. The flying tip says to use a medium throw with a slight upward angle. You don't want to just throw it as hard as you can into the air. You want kind of a medium toss to it and at a slightly upward angle, maybe like that, like that. And this one is supposed to go, it says 45 feet. So I don't know, I think these two bad boys right here need to have competition. Mr. Snubnose and Mr. Dart. The dart and the arrow. Who will win? Wait, you're each going a different direction. That's not going to work. You'll have to experiment and see for yourself which one will win. When you do the experiment, think about maybe why. Think about things like, for instance, they are the same weight, right? We used the same piece of paper, just one sheet of paper for each. We didn't cut anything off. We didn't add anything to either one. You might even want to add, maybe if you put a paper clip on here and see what you can do with a paper clip and weight and balance. Where would be a good place to put it on here? What would be a good thing to do? Try different things, experiment, see what happens to your plane, and then decide, was that a good thing or was that a fail? And if it was, good, fail and do it again. Try something different. That's the fun thing about this, is you can learn a lot about aerodynamics simply by just making paper airplanes and playing with them. There's a lot of things in aeronautics that we have this question, what is it? Of course, UFO, an unidentified flying object. That's what it is. My dad is a retired aeronautical engineer, so I grew up learning a lot about aeronautics, aerodynamics, and all of that kind of stuff. And if you were to look at the Stealth, I remember when it first came out, I thought, what is it? It didn't look like a regular airplane, like what we would see in the sky. It was very, very different. It looked very different on purpose. They purposefully designed it to do certain things. So sometimes we do see things that are just unusual and we wonder, what is it? We're going to make one of those right now. As long as people have the desire to experiment, what is it will continue to be made and flown. So we can have fun experimenting with all kinds of things that can take flight. This one, you'll need a sheet of paper, a plastic drinking straw, some tape, scissors, and ruler. And I'll show you how it's done, and then you can gather all your stuff and try it for yourself. I've never made one of these. I've seen them, and I've seen projects made like them, but I've never actually seen one fly. I've never made one myself. So this is going to be really cool. I'm going to learn right along with you guys. It says paper, but I think you'll need something a little thicker than just regular paper. You can use cardstock. That'll work just fine. Or if you just have some scrap paper that's actually thick, a little bit thicker than usual, that works too. You don't want it too thick because it does need to be pliable enough to shape into a circle. Right there, it's got to be shaped into a circle. I would recommend using stuff, you get these little ads and things in the mail reminding you to change your oil or whatever. In fact, that's what I'm going to use here for this one, just because I like to rescue junk mail, and sometimes I paint over it. I had trouble finding one because I've used them all in my art projects. And the main thing here is that you want to do some experimenting and see what you come up with as far as length of strips that you use to make your rings. The main thing is one has to be larger than the other. Now they do suggest here, they give some specifics. Their recommendations are a strip that is 3/4 inch by 6 1/4 inch, and the other one is 1/2 inch by 5 1/2 inches. So one is going to be more narrow and long, and the other is going to be wider and shorter. I think that you can play around with the variations just to experiment so that you'll learn a little bit about it. But I'm just going to cut this off. I'm going to use the end of this, and then I'm going to use the length, but I'm going to make it a little more narrow, like that. And I'm not going to measure. Oh, I was pretty off on that one, wasn't I? But I'm going to experiment and see. Let's make a loop, and then you tape it together. Tape the ends together so it stays a loop. Don't tape it to your thumb. Okay, so there's one loop. And I'm going to make another loop out of this one and tape it together. This one's a little wider than that one and shorter, so it's going to make a smaller circle because I used a shorter piece of paper. So that gives you a smaller circle because you have less to work with. Okay, so here's my two circles. One is wider than the other, and one is bigger than the other. And you put them on the end of the straw. And this part's important in that they need to line up. They have to be the same. So I'm going to tape it. I'm going to tape one on one end of the straw. The first one doesn't really matter because it's the first one. It's the second one that matters more because you have to line it up. There. Okay, now I've got that one on there. Now's the tricky part. This has to be the same as this. If I taped it to the side here, it's not going to be the same. Or under here, not going to work. So I need to get as close as I can to the same so that they are the same. They're on the same level. So not turned this way or this way, but they're spot on straight looking right at each other. I think I got it. And that part is important. In fact, what you might want to do is just to experiment and do it wrong and just see what happens. See what happens when they're not looking at each other and not lined up. Okay, but these seem to be, there's the bottom line there, and then they both seem to be lined up pretty decently. Another thing you can do is you can put a wing on there if you want to just like cut another piece and put it in here. Ooh, we could just cut that car out. I don't know, I'm just going to cut out this really neat looking little car. I kind of dig cars. So So I'm going to stick that on there and make like a little wing and see what happens with it. And then I'm going to fly it without it and see what I like better. Just for giggles, because that's what inventors and experimenters do. People that aren't afraid to try things. And it's good to experiment with things like this. Right, yes, that's the thing I just, now see, it's not very even, but then I didn't cut out a very even shape. But that's the fun thing about trying out different things. You just never know. Okay, so I'm going to try putting it with a little wing on it, and then I'm going to try without the little wing. And I think the thing you want to do, because it does not look like it's going to fly anywhere, but I think you want to point it in this direction. So I think the smaller ring is the front of the plane and the larger ring is the back of the plane. And you want to fly it in this direction. So you're just going to, like that. Oh, sorry, pup. Is it time to wake up? Huh? Did I interrupt your little nap? Sorry, little pup. Whoa, I like that. Okay. So that did okay, and I woke up my dog. And then I went down the hall and wanted to fly it down the hall. This seems to be like causing it to be a little choppy. So I'm going to remove this now. I think that's just kind of getting in the way. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't experiment with something else like that. I think everybody should just give their own little thing a try. Now I'm going to go try it again. This time I will not mess with my poor little dog. Okay, here we go. Trying it again. I know you can't see it. I'll give a play-by-play. Wow, that looked a lot better. I'm back. So what happened was, when I removed this, it was better. But I wonder, because it is such an odd shape, I'm wondering what would happen if I made it more angular like this and this. I mean, yeah, it would make the car look kind of funny, but I'm wondering what would happen with the air going over it without these big, like this is just sticking out right there, and I don't know, would that make it more aerodynamic or what? I don't know. That's the fun part of this. Now what you can do is, as you're throwing these and you're experimenting with yours, if it just does a big old nosedive the second you throw it into the air and it goes meow, like that, well, then you want to move the large wing forward slightly and then try again. If you go too far forward, it's not going to work. But what you're doing is you're just going to move this one. They're calling these the wings. So the bigger circle, move it up a little bit, just untape it and then move it up a little bit. What you're doing there is you're redistributing the weight. You're putting the weight somewhere else. So you can scoot it on up. I'm scooting it up like right here, but as you can see, I'm still keeping it lined up with this ring, and they have to be straight, spot on, and I'll stick the tape back on there. And that should keep it from doing a little nosedive. And if the glider wobbles when you first try it, try moving the small wing back a little bit, and that should give it more of a glide. So there's some adjustments that you can make just moving the wings back and forth. What you don't want to do is make a huge bunch of just like, okay, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, and next thing you know, you've got the things sitting right next to each other. I don't know. You could try it and see what happens when you do that. Now, when it's properly trimmed and it's all, and you got all of your rings in exactly the right places where you want them, it should fly straight. It should do well. So what's going on is the top and the bottom of the wings are providing the lift. That's right in there. So this underneath here at the top, and then underneath that's giving it its lift. And the sides of the wings act like the tail. So keeping that in mind, remember when we wanted to make adjustments with our dart plane, we had made some adjustments on the tail. So if the sides of the wings, right here and here, act like the tail, experiment and see what would happen if you pushed in on them. If they weren't a complete circle, what happens if you did this? I don't know. Give it a try. We have a lot of airplane books at the library that you can go online, check out, and then you can use our curbside service to get them. And there certainly are a lot more ways to make a plane than what I've showed you. I just showed you some of the basics today. So investigate further and feel free to experiment and try to find other things that you can do. You can have contests too, like I said, this one and our little snub-nosed buddy. They could have distance challenges to see who can go the furthest, who can go the fastest. You might even take a big, gigantic hula hoop and see if you can fly it right through the hoop. See how accurate your aim is. But either way, just have a lot of fun. These are just some fun summertime things to do. And I'll have more coming up soon. But bye for now.